Stepping out into the room, the searing light of the cameras shone directly into Kroshka's eyes. Wincing internally, he cursed his immediate superiors for choosing him for this posting. 24 species in the Pan-Galactic Accord, 100 million strong in the PGA's diplomatic corps, and they choose me. Blinking his secondary set of eyelids rapidly to clear his gaze, Kroshka's highly trained eyes took in the scene before him. Bright lights, black environment, barebones furniture, a multitude of recording devices. So, it was to be an interrogation simulation. The newest species to come to the open arms of the PGA, humans had come with smiling faces and open palms, leading to many member species being charmed into what was clearly a false sense of security. But not the Jorblashans. This highly militarized and specialized defensive peoples took one look at the humans with their forward-facing eyes and pointed teeth and saw them for what they truly were. Predators, killers, the enemy. As such, the Jorblashan delegation pushed hard to include as many members of their species on the diplomatic team sent to engage in the initial dealing on the humans' homeworld. Their defensive shells and scaled armor had been the literal backbone of the Accord's forces for generations. And the Jorblashans would be damned if they would give out now, not when a sneak thief had crept into their midst. Of course, not just anyone could have been sent on this highly important mission. High Command knew they needed a specialist. The best of the best. Jorblashans weren't the fastest, but they damn well were the toughest. And whoever was sent would need to be. Placement on a high-grav world, surrounded by enemies. There was no telling what would befall the peaceable delegation. Therefore, Kroshka was an elite, the best that the Jorblashans had turned out in recent memory. As such, he had been trained in every applicable field, from lone survival field drills on desolate planets, to VR urban combat simulations. Continuing his walk forward, Kroshka sat on the only other available chair. The bald human across from him began the formalities and introductions of the training. "Hey, what's going on everybody, it's..." Tuning him out, Kroshka reflected on the day's assignment. He was to engage in an interrogation, cleverly disguised as a PR fluff piece, and he was chosen due to the humans' fascination with the Jorblashans. Apparently, they looked like the love child of a pangolin and an armadillo. Ostensibly the humans wanted to learn all about their new ally, and the common folk were starved for details about the PGA. The specifics of said fluff piece, however, escaped Kroshka as the cultural translator hadn't had a chance to update and accommodate the wide range of human eccentricities. It probably wouldn't bother them a bit if those details they wanted to learn included the strength of our forces, the frequencies of our planetary shields, and our fleet capabilities. "So, are you ready?" The question of the human before him finally broke through Kroshka's reverie. Almost before Kroshka could grumble out an "absolutely," two drones burst through the sides of the room, nearly causing him to draw his concealed blaster before relaxing. However, what his cultural translator indicated that the drones carried caused him to reconsider. The amputated remains of some small beings, placed ceremonially on wooden platters. At the same moment, a row of bottles rose from carefully concealed ports in the table between them, the bottles and platters coming to a rest on the table nearly simultaneously. His neural network flashed an alert across his vision. "Attention. Unknown substance. Introductory Earther genomic packet lists as capsaicin. Closest Jorblashan approximation. Concentrated iocane powder. Threat level. Decidedly high." Hesitating a moment, Kroshka stared across the table to the human, who had already selected a piece of meat and gestured for Kroshka to do the same. Barbarians, the lot of them. But if they want to play a game of who blinks first, so be it. Grinding his teeth, Kroshka reached for the dead creature's limb. Hesitating the briefest of moments, the wing was popped into his mouth and immediately crushed it into a smooth paste. A paste of fire. A roiling, undulating mass of pain that filled every corner of his mouth. Spitting to the side in a conveniently placed receptacle, Kroshka gasped for breath, a ringing beginning to form in his ears. So I heard that you Jorblassians are a very social species, so we gathered pictures of some of your childhood friends and wondered if you could give us some details on the time that you. Kroshka couldn't believe it, both due to the casual flaunting of their information gathering skills and the pace of the question. This interviewer must be some sort of machine, he's not even reacting to this volcano erupting in my mouth. Kroshka managed to mutter out some vague childhood anecdote without too many details of the rigorous training regimens of his homeworld and prepared to take his leave. Slapping himself in the face in order to regain control of his faculties before rising from his seat, Kroshka faintly heard his opponent taunt him. Careful around the eyes, Mr. Kroshka, but now that we've got the easiest one out of the way, let's kick it up a notch. With that terrifying statement, the interviewer reached for another wing and patiently waited for Kroshka to copy him. Thinking of his squad mates, life mate, and all those innocent Jorblassians who were counting on him, Kroshka steeled himself and reached for the next wing in line. Kroshka was a mess. 5 times he had contested with this insane human. 5 times he had waded into the breach, laid his life on the line, betting that he was the better of his opponent, believing in himself. And for what? The human had barely shown any signs of stopping. And now for the tipping point, our venerated classic, Da Bomb. It's insanity, how can he continue, he's not even phased. Trembling, Kroshka reached for one of the few remaining wings. He could feel the heat through his fingers. Kroshka raised his arm once, only for the traitorous appendage to fail him and flop down to the table. Grasping his wrist with his other hand, the wing slowly began the tortuous path back up to his face. Right before it entered his mouth, the smell of it entered his nose. Instantly he began to spasm and fall from the chair. Even the barest whiff of this highly concentrated poison was too much for the already overdosed Jorblassian to handle. Oh, looks like another entry onto the wall of shame. Any last words, Mr. Kroshka? The smiling bald human was the last sight that a gurgling, frothing Kroshka saw before he was swarmed by a recovery and aid team, bringing him back to the embassy for emergency medical aid. Author's account and the link to original text is in the description.